Okay, welcome to Stampscaping 101. I'm just putting the final matting touches on this card that I made. It's kind of an open face card. It's the scene is a half sheet, 8.5 by 5.5 piece. I've put this little thin Star Dream light blue matte around the main scene, and this is probably looks black on video here, but this is a really dark navy blue glossy cardstock. So anyways, open face card, just a blank back right here, and that's where I would write things onto. But this is a scene that I just did with this wave stamp. It's the Great Wave and some of the medium-sized waves to kind of carry the textures of the kind of cresting waves out to the edge. And I worked it around the hot sun, which is done in blacks and grays and blues, so it thus becomes a moon. But I wanted to do something with this cresting wave kind of coming over this, I don't know if it's a setting moon or a rising moon or whatnot. And that was the whole idea, but then this area up here I felt needed some clouds, so we did this kind of the spiral, spiraling, billowing, I don't know what the word for it, center of this, I don't know, it's not really a storm or something like that, but this kind of this whirlpool of imagery right here, the swirling type of thing, kind of came about more in the shading process than anything. I wasn't really thinking about that, but I thought that was kind of effective, and it had this motion moving around like that, and it kind of carries your eye into this area. The area right in here, which is the thing that I was most interested in, and I wanted to create that with the use of a lot of texture, so we've used the bleed proof white, the Dr. Martens watercolor, opaque watercolor, to splatter paint in a lot of the the texture down there. And what it represents is kind of the splashing waves, maybe the spindrift coming off the top of the crests here, and this kind of, I just forgot the name of it, the crest of the waves kind of blowing off there, whitecaps. And then we've added in some extra texture with the use of the white gel pen, so I've gone in and amidst all this kind of this almost random kind of application of that splatter, we've gone back in and I've added in these really specific areas of that same type of texture in the form of a white dot up in the clouds to kind of reinforce lighting within the scene. And just to finish it off, like I say in the video, if you watch it, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to crop this scene, maybe just, I did it on large format, and I thought about just doing something like this here, but I thought, maybe that doesn't look too bad, but it was kind of empty up there, so I added the Scenic Sentiments word stamp of night music. I thought it was, kind of fit this, and I just added it in right here. It looked okay, kind of centered as well, but I thought it looked more effective this way, so kind of in that little whirl pool of, I don't know, lighting, I guess you can say. So anyways, that was a fun project, and this area right down here, with all that texture and application of kind of random splattering and kind of that foggy texture, I didn't know if I was going to be able to get anything close to, the general concept. I'm not going for anything exact, but the general concept of this little area down here. I wanted to put, the viewer's eye kind of right in this area right here. So that was pretty fun. And I worked in the this kind of monochromatic looking color scheme. It was just easier to achieve what I was going after. I wanted to really focus in on texture. So sometimes if you have tons of color, it can kind of distract from, I don't know, your main point, if it's indeed something like texture and really soft lighting. So anyways, that's why I didn't move into kind of more aqua greens and other tones in here, which, might have looked okay too, but I don't know, we'll keep it fairly simple and very straightforward in terms of the textural statement, I guess you could say. So anyways, a fairly big card, and let's see, if you choose to watch this video, I hope you enjoy it. It gets kind of longer, when it gets into these larger format scenes like this, so a few times I have to apply some inks and stop the video, but, and then I just start on again after everything kind of sets up a couple times. So thanks again for tuning in, and hope you enjoy the scene. Okay, we're going to start off this scene here today on a half sheet of glossy cardstock. Now, I don't intend to keep the finished piece at in the same dimension, but I'm going to be working larger for the purpose of, I don't know, kind of what I'm going after in this scene. Because I need the space to kind of do more of a kind of a free-flowing type of application. At least that's the concept. I haven't done this scene before, so I just have an idea in mind and kind of want to go with it. This is going to be this kind of this cresting wave right here. And I'll add in some additional ones, but I want to do this moon kind of, it could be either a sun or a moon. I want to put this in here somewhere. Maybe I won't stamp out this portion of the wave. I want this moon to be kind of underneath that, the crest right there. And I want a lot of spindrift coming off the top of the wave, and a lot of splashing going on in here, a lot of texture and light to be illuminated by this moon. And I'm going for this kind of softer light. We'll see if I'm successful or not. Sometimes it's better if I do something a couple times, but I don't know, I just want to get right into it. I don't want to do a trial run here, so let's see, let's start off here. This is going to be kind of done in a monochromatic approach in terms of the beginning of it. I'm going to add in some color and hopefully get in some deep, saturated kind of blue-greenish tones, I think. But we'll approach it as somewhat of a monochromatic one first and try to get a lot of different values defined just with the use of blacks and grays first, and then we'll go in and do kind of more of a tinting of those values after all that's been established. Actually, I'm saying maybe I'll go with a vertical format on this. Let's try something like that. Okay. Trying to think, if I do it vertically, then I can have more room for some sky. Maybe we'll do that. We'll put this kind of lower third, kind of rule of thirds type of thing. And we'll put the moon down here somewhere. Okay. Alright. Looks like I used white on this last time or something. Okay, now, I'm not going to use this whole image, like I said, but let's just ink up the whole thing first, and then I'll remove some of the ink. I needed to kind of see it on here. It's easier if I kind of ink all this up, then I can kind of see the the image a little bit more clearly as far as what portion I want to use. Okay, I'm just using water and a paper towel here, and let's go in and remove the ink where I don't want an impression. If I get a little bit of an impression of it, it won't really matter because of all the other tones we'll use. Okay, now that moon is going to go in this area, so I'm looking at this stamp and I'm thinking about using some lighter tones, lighter values. Let's have it transition a little bit from a really crisp impression to a lighter one where the moon's going to be, and hopefully it'll look like that moonlight is shining or reflecting, that moonlight's reflecting off of the kind of that curling section of the wave. Okay, now that would be just kind of going straight across. I need a little bit more of a tilt, I think, for a little bit more of a dramatic effect. So let's stamp it at a little bit more of an angle. About like so. And hopefully, like, this area right here doesn't stamp out too much. I don't know if I mean for this wave to be kind of somewhere out at sea, or it's like someone standing on shore looking out, We'll kind of figure that out as this scene develops. Okay, that was the Great Wave, and this one is Waves Medium. And we'll fill in some additional, wave texture down here. As with most of the scenic stamping that we do and the designs, kind of the nature of the designs, we don't have to really do any masking here. I'm just going to overlap. I'm probably going to be overlapping about this much of the stamp into this one right here. And kind of angle it accordingly where I think it'll match up well with that stamp. And then we'll go for some additional impressions this way. Maybe I'll kind of make it like a, little curved type of application. Let's wipe off some of the bottom, because where I'm going to overlap this one, I'll wipe off some of the bottom here so that it blends into this one a little bit more gracefully. Okay. Like so, and looks like we need another one over this way. So nice kind of turbulent seas going on right here. Let's do this. Let's ink it up again, and let's wipe off kind of this bottom portion down here. Kind of doing it with a bit of a dry paper towel too, so it transitions from dark to, lighter and lightest down here. If I use a wet paper towel, it'll just wipe it off clean, and it'll be just a, dark and then nothing. Okay, I want it to kind of smoothly transition. At least that's the goal. Sometimes I don't take off enough, and it, gives a stronger impression than I think, but yeah, we'll see how it goes here. Okay, let's go for another impression. I won't even re-ink this time. I think there's enough ink on there. Okay, so we have this working right now, and let's go with, I was wondering if I want to put a horizon there a little bit with the Seaside Cove stamp. I mean, I can do it, you know, anywhere up here that I want. I don't think I want that. I think I want more kind of turbulence going on down here when all's said and done. So I'm going to leave this out of here. This straight line would look okay, but it might look a bit kind of static, you know, from the, I guess the feeling I'm going after in this one. Alright, let's see. Let's stamp this. This is actually called Hot Sun, but, you know, it really just depends on what hue, you know, color scheme you stamp it in. I mean, if I stamp out the sun in blue, then, you know, it probably wouldn't be the sun, it would be a moon. Okay, I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking a dry paper towel and wiping off a good portion of it on the inside, so hopefully that gives this kind of emanating light feel kind of a nice glow to it. Okay, let's put that right underneath the cresting wave. Okay. All right. I wonder if I should put some clouds around here. Maybe I should do that. Like the moon is kind of peering out from behind some clouds. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. Otherwise, I'm going to have too much kind of open area up here. I want to do something with the sky, but I think just some clouds maybe, or something like that. Or how about, you know, maybe a bank of clouds, and we can have kind of deep space up here. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll try something like that. Let me get the cloud cumulus. Okay. Okay, my cloud cumulus stamp. You can tell it's very well used and nice and inked up. Alright, let's do this in the same ink that we've been using. I could change up and go with a different color, but I think this is going to be fairly bold in terms of the use of value, so meaning I'll use a lot of color on here and some darker tones and things like that. I want it to be a fairly bold and dramatic sky, so let's just stamp it out in black, okay? If I wanted, you know, this stamp to be more serene, then if I stamp it out with the light blue, it would look like a, you know, a nice billowy light, you know, cloud on a, you know, a sunny, peaceful day. Okay, let's go for some additional impressions. I'm kind of wiping off the, in this case, it would be the top side of the stamp up here, because I don't want it to look real blocky, okay? And also, if that's the light source, okay, you can see how the tops of these clouds are lighter. I'm tilting the cloud so that the top, you know, that illuminated area is the closest to the sun. So, in other words, I'm making impressions like this. Then when I make another one over here, I'm rotating it around. And I'm overlapping into the, you know, the sun quite a bit. You don't want to just stamp right over the top of it, otherwise we won't be able to see it anymore, okay? Alright. Alright, this one's going to be a little bit tricky. I have that cresting wave there, so I'm just going to use a little bit of the tip of this. If some of it goes into that wave, so be it. Like right there, but I wanted to get a little bit of texture there. Okay, let's build out some more. Wiping off the top side of it. The light source is coming from right here, so I'm taking this cloud and it's going all the way around like that with the top source, illuminated area facing the light. If I had clouds underneath here, then it would be like this, okay? But when the clouds are above the source, we're doing it like that. Okay, now I'm getting farther away from that light source, so, it's not quite so important to have that transition of value going from dry to wet and light to dark by wiping off a lot, so maybe we'll make these impressions of the cloud farther away from the light source darker, because maybe in the end result that area is going to be darker anyway. I'm just going to put all clouds up here. I stamped a few of those and I thought, that looks good. I'm not going to have like open area out here like of, stars in the sky or something like that. I don't know, I might put a few stars if it gets dark enough out here, but we'll just build it, this cloud texture out first. Something like that. Okay. So, quite a busy scene. There's not a lot of definition in terms of texture going from sky to sea right now, sky to surface, but we'll define more of that through the use of value and tone and eventually color. Alright, now let's see, I'm wondering if I should go in with a little bit of some tone at least, just to get that started, or if I should just go in straight with the black. Let's just, we might do a little bit both, but let's just start off with black. Okay, I checked it because here's a bottle green right here, and you can see it's really dark as well, but sometimes I've been mistaken in just working so fast I just kind of grab a color that looks, it's really dark too. So if you're using Marvy pads, always check that. It could be a bottle green or a Prussian blue or something like that, really dark. Okay, now I'm going to start on the outside edge. Now, you notice in a lot of videos, and including some of my most recent ones, I'm talking about starting off with a re-inker, and it being the easiest way to kind of do a very gradual and, as far as the surface goes, a very easy way to apply ink without getting harsh shapes like that. Now Marvy inks are thinner too, so the chance of really getting a very defined shape of your applicator, whatever it might be, stylus tools or things like cosmetic sponges or whatever, that's a good way to go. But I mean, if you do have experience using this tip right here, and it doesn't take that long to get the feel of it, you can go in with just about any kind of ink and do very smooth transitions. Now, there's a lot of texture, so if I am doing something like this, it's not so apparent over the top of all that texture. But if I do press hard, I'm going to get a harsh oval shape in here somewhere. So, what I'm doing more is I'm staying in one area, you see, like this, and I'm kind of going for that transition like that, okay? And that's what's happening in these areas right here. So when using these tips, you don't want to do it so, you know, sparse like that, you know, sponge, 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 okay? You want to kind of stay in an area like that, and then you're kind of moving it in, okay? So you start in the darker area, and you work your way in. Typically, it's from the outside edge to the inside. All right. Okay, so adding this in, and the more we do of that, you know, I said I was going to cut some of this paper out, but I don't mind the composition at this size so far. So we'll see how it goes. If I do end up cropping the scene afterwards, I still might do that. But let's see. Okay. Now, when you're applying tone like this, whatever you don't tone in is going to look, it's going to represent either your light source or possibly reflected light from whatever source, you know, there is either inside the scene or outside of the scene. So in other words, if you want some of these clouds to remain nice and light, you know, to create variation in terms of value, in terms of kind of representational light throughout a scene, then just don't tone them out. A lot of times that's one of those concepts when you're kind of doing these reverse images. Okay, so if a moon is basically absent of tone and value, meaning darker colors than, you know, the white of the paper, a lot of times when people see that, if they haven't kind of done this sort of stamping before, they often wonder, how did you get that moon light? You know, when all's said and done, when there's a bunch of colors over it, they're asking, did you mask it off? Did you use a resist to get that, you know, get that moon light, or to create a light moon? Well, the answer is, of course, it's just you don't tone over the areas that you want to remain light. So there's nothing you really need to do to those things. You just avoid them, in other words. And that's the biggest thing. A lot of times people just tone over the whole thing, then they think, oh wait, I wanted that cloud to remain light, you know. So you can't add in like a light blue or something like that and, you know, have it return light. You know, you're just going to be making things darker. Now, if that did get dark in here with a little bit gray tones, I can't really bring it back to, you know, the white of the paper, but what I can do is I can make something around it much darker, and then that will seem lighter by contrast. So, you know, that's a little trick you can do. But, in other words, selective coloring, selective shading, okay? Going down here into these waves, I don't want all the waves just to be super light. I want some different colors of values, different shades within that texture down there, the wave textures. Okay, this is my light source, so I'm kind of making the perimeter a little bit darker, and that should make that, you know, we always used to say made it pop, you know, in our art classes, you know, when you put something darker next to something lighter, like I was mentioning with those clouds, you kind of make it pop out at you, you know, so this is hopefully going to pop a little bit, you know, making it really stand out, in other words, visually, by the use of contrast. Okay, now sometimes, now when I'm doing this, I might get a little, you know, bit of a shape like that, but I don't just keep, you know, if I get something like this that I don't like right here, okay, I don't just also just keep going like this, and this. Oh, I got it. And then I just keep going like that, making it darker and darker and darker and darker and darker. If you don't want something like that, you know, where you have the edge, what you do is you just kind of feather it out a little bit like that, right? So it's transitioning. You don't just stay in one spot. You know, you're kind of moving with your applicator, using a lighter touch, and then you're getting that to transition out as opposed to just going one spot, okay? And I'm saying a lot of this right now because I am using the darkest color that I possibly can right now in black, and it's a Marvy color, so it kind of, you know, it absorbs into the paper faster, so the whole thing about this is just use a little bit of touch, you know. Don't get impatient, you know, if you're kind of tapping in here and it's not getting dark quite as fast as you want, then that's when people go like that, and it's a big, you know, shape again. The more taps it takes for something, I mean, you don't want to be tapping onto something completely dry, but the more taps you know, something takes to achieve the value that you're going after, the more control you have over it. So if it takes me 10 taps, 20 taps to do that, it's easier and more controlled than trying to ink up and go for something really, you know, dark right off the bat. It's not like brush calligraphy or something like that where everything has to be like super spontaneous, although I like that look, but it's just not the technique that we're going after right here. Okay, adding in some tone around that, that moon. And this is kind of where I have to be a little bit careful because I have to kind of try to figure out what part of that wave is going to be dark and what part's going to be light. I want some of that light reflecting off that moon, but I don't want it so light everywhere that it doesn't look like a reflection. It's just super light down here, so kind of have to figure out something with that. Here's a row of waves right here, and here's another one up here. I'm thinking about making the area behind this wave darker, kind of back there. So let's see if I can just achieve that with the angle of this sponge tip right here. I'm kind of almost painting. I'm barely touching the page though. It's with a very, very light touch, okay? Okay, don't scrub with these tips, otherwise you're going to rip them. Okay, so I'm just barely going on here. Alright, so I'm creating a little bit of separation between these two waves. Okay. Separation in terms of depth. And you can see it's just a very light gray. If I want it darker, then I will just keep doing this until it gets darker, or I just re-inked, so it's going to be fairly wet again. Okay, let's create some separation between some of the more distant waves. So what we're doing is we're oscillating the use of light and shade to create distance and separation and just kind of an overall visual interest to the scene by, you know, not having identical values, or a one value, I guess, across the entire thing. So, in other words, simplified, what I'm saying is dark, light, dark, light, dark, okay? And that's what's going up here in the clouds. You know, here's light, dark, light, dark, you know. This is all light right here, so maybe I should put in some, a little bit of value changes within that area. One of my teachers used to call it checkerboarding. you're kind of checkerboarding your surface, you know, creating that variation. And there's no set area that you have to do. I mean, if I did this again, it would probably look different, you know, from one scene to the next, even if it was the same layout, you know, in terms of the composition here. All right. Let's go into some of these waves over here. It's kind of fleshing out the scene somewhat, you know. It's where you're kind of defining everything. You're defining the imagery in terms of the volumes of it. And you're also defining the scene as a whole. In other words, you're dictating where you want your viewer's eye to go with through the use of value. It's like a stage production, you know. If you have the spotlight on something, that's probably where your audience eyes, you know, are going to be focused on. So I want the viewer's eye, I'm trying to direct the viewer's eye to this area of light right here. Now, some of these areas up here, okay, that being said, are the same value, light, as that light right down here. So what I think I might do is I might just go in here and just add a little bit more ink to just kind of bump them down a little bit. I don't want the emphasis, you know, to be up here. I want it to be down here. So let's just add a little bit of tone up here. Okay, I'm adding a little bit under the sun. The waves will probably be, you know, for the most part, darker than the sky or the clouds in the sky, but let's put a little bit of that tone behind the waves to make, you know, like the little crests of the, you know, these smaller waves to kind of, you know, be illuminated by the moon. Okay. I almost feel like I'm painting here. I'm really not, but it'd be an insult to painters if I, you know, but it feels like it, you know, with this this foam tip, you know, the way you're doing, the way you do this. It's kind of like dry brushing too. Like this, like I said, this tip isn't really wet right now. Okay. Around this moon, it's got like I have this on a little bit of a lazy Susan here. I always think it's easier to do that than, you know, to come around here like this. It's just, you know, turn your card instead. We don't always have to work kind of upright. Alright. Kind of fleshing out some of these waves, giving them a little bit of shade shading, and you can take, use cues from the image itself. You can see what areas are kind of darker and lighter, and just go in and re-emphasize that, that shading scheme. So, in other words, just look at the design, and that'll give you a pretty good indication of where you can add additional tone very effectively and to harmonize with the design. In other words, where it's dark, just make it darker. And you can, in this case I'm doing it with black, but if it was a blue, emerald green ocean, then I would probably do the shadows in those colors, okay? And I'll probably add, I think I'm going to add blue to this scene, but later on, but you can do the same thing with any kind of shade that you're applying, or any color. Alright, kind of framing things off a little bit. What I do in most of the cards, if not 100% of them, I frame the scene by making the perimeters darker. Especially in the four corners. Unless there's a light source right in one of the corners, then I kind of avoid that corner. But for the most part, kind of interior lit or something like that, then I hit the four corners quite a bit. It's a good framing kind of device, to do four-corner darkening. It's like putting a vignette on a photograph reviewers or something. We're adding a vignette here to the scenes. Okay, so things are starting to develop a little bit. We have these waves kind of crashing right here. We see this. Actually, that's a good passage right there. Just that bottom portion, huh? Whether we like that top portion or not, I'm not quite sure. But we'll see if it. We'll see how it looks. If it doesn't look too good up here, if I prefer it better down here, one of the other things I can do is I can just really darken that in quite a bit, have the textures going on in the background. I can put one of those quotes here, like from the Scenic Sentiment line. I'm sure there's something on clouds, or I don't know, philosophy in general. Alright, adding more and more. You can see hitting those corners are getting quite dark. Okay. I think I like the idea of darkening that in quite a bit. I still want to, bring everyone's attention down here, so let's cap off the top a little bit more through the use of value. Okay, I think that looks better. I can still see a little bit of texture up there, but for the most part I don't have it so open, open to the sky. I want everyone's eyes to kind of land down here. When you have it really light up top there, it's like the viewer's eye goes like this and it goes right off the top of the page, but I want it to kind of, people look down here, then you kind of wander up there, then it brings the eye back around this way. If you kind of cap it off a little bit and create kind of a natural flow, within the card. Alright, Getting there, huh? We see this illumination happening a little bit more. We'll bring a little bit more tone in this way. I'm trying to look for certain patterns at this point in time. I suppose you can kind of plan for them, but you know, it's not like I'm stamping clouds and waves every day, so I couldn't foresee kind of what was going to happen in many ways with as far as this tone goes. So you just kind of have to let things develop sometimes, and you know, just kind of go with it. And you know, for lack of a better description, this one right here, I see this kind of swirling action, and I think this little area right here can kind of emphasize, you know, some of that movement. Kind of came around in here. Maybe this little area right in here, maybe I'll darken that up a little bit more to really emphasize that same type of curling what is it? Curling kind of shape, I guess. And what I'm doing, you see these little shards, they look like you know, here's your moon, and then we have all these little kind of areas like this, you know, kind of coming in here like that. So everything's kind of has that, you know, directional movement getting right to the moon. Now I plan on using some Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White. This is a perfect place to put in a bunch of like splashing water and a lot of texture down there. It's going to be white, so it'll look like it's capturing some of that light. We'll add in some of that tint still, so some colors are to come. But I think our values are almost, you know, set. I might want to create a little bit more separation between that moon and the surface of the water. I'm not sure it needs it, maybe not. But I don't know, maybe we're ready for some color here. So I'm going to let this set up for a little bit. It's pretty dry, you know, and I'm not too worried about it. I mean, this is, you know, pretty dry to the touch. Even in some of the wetter areas, especially with it being the Marvy inks, which are blending in there. But I still think I'm going to give it a little bit of time before I tone in there. And plus, I want to kind of look at it with some fresh eyes in a little bit and see if it needs any other tone. Sometimes when you're working on something straight, you don't see some other, I don't know, little details that you might want to add in here. So I'm going to let that set for a bit and then come back to it. Okay, back a few hours later, allowing the inks to set up a little bit more, and I don't know, sometimes it's a good idea to, if I'm doing a small card, I'm really not going to take a lot of time in between kind of steps, but if it's a larger piece like this, sometimes it's good to kind of step back and come back to it and kind of evaluate, you know, how the card's looking. I don't know, you're kind of looking at it with some different eyes at times when you come back to something. I think it looks okay. Let's apply some different tones in here, and also sometimes it's a good idea to look at the piece from different angles as well, kind of more an objective approach. You know, I'm not looking at it so much as waves, but just kind of in general in terms of the spacing, how the light looks like it's, you know, coming from. In general, just kind of the compositional structure of it. I don't know. I think it looks okay. Let's try some other inks on here. Now, I'm going to go on with the Adirondack Light Aqua on here to begin with, and we'll take it from there. It's a very light color, and it'll be tinting the scene, and while this is a very light color, it will also be darkening areas as well, because it will be adding value, okay? Very light value. Let's see, I'm not sure if you can tell that tone's in there. I might have to add some re-inker onto my pad, I think. Alright, that looks about right. I don't even know what the final dimensions of this will be. I'm still kind of on the fence as far as deciding whether or not I'm going to crop this this scene and kind of focus it, in on this area, more, just by getting rid of a lot of it. As I'm toning this in, I could get rid of, a lot of these clouds. Maybe up here it's just too light for me. I can focus more of the tension down here by just darkening, everything out. Maybe I'll do that on the top clouds, and we'll retain a lot of the light down in the light source area, meaning the moon. All right. So this is also kind of introducing temperature into the scene. Of course, we're going with blue. It'll be a cool temperature. Let's go ahead and take that on down into the waves as well. And just because we started off with black and we're now on a different color, doesn't mean you can't go back and add more of your previous hues into the scene. In this case, it'll just be black. One of the things that I need to do is, as I'm doing this, I'm looking at these waves. These waves just don't seem very rendered to me and fleshed in. They need more body, okay? Even though water, people think of water as being clear, but you can think of water, in some instances, as, depending on the lighting, it could be, like a sheet of blackness, if you look at it at nighttime or something like that. So for this wave here, I think it's hard to tell the separation between this area of the wave and the sky. So I'm thinking a dark area right here on this edge would be nice and effective, right around right there, and it'll create a little bit of a separation between, the water surface and the sky area. I'll leave a little bit of it light around the edge there where the moonlight's, reflecting off of the edge of the wave, and probably leave it lighter in here. So probably go with some darker tones down here too to make it look more kind of turbulent. So, and it'll kind of hopefully it'll kind of mirror what's going on kind of up in these areas, and these kind of scalloped shapes of I guess they're shadows. Okay, but anyways, you can see, I don't know if you can see on the camera or not, just that little bit of tone. I'm always having to kind of play around with the white balance on this camera when I'm shooting these videos. but there is kind of a bluish tinge to this. I don't know, maybe let's try some other tone as well. Why don't we try another blue as well, just so you can see a little bit more of a kind of that value temperature change going on. Memento Bahama Blue. It's kind of a medium tone blue. I started my darker areas and introduce it into the lighter areas in a kind of a controlled fashion. Controlled fashion meaning kind of gradual. You can notice I'm just kind of staying in one area for a while before I bring it down into the scene. The scene is really wet too. I mean, I had a lot of re-inker fluid on that pad, you know, the last color, the Adirondack Lights Aqua. Memento is, you know, kind of a thicker ink as well, so that would spread very well just on its own, but having that coat of Adirondack ink in there is really making the surface very slippery. Okay, so we have this kind of this glowing blue now. Kind of interesting. Why don't I use some of this blue on this wave? Let's see how that goes. Kind of just doing it on, again, the back side of the wave. Kind of makes me want to go night surfing doing this. Okay. Let me try to bring some of this tone into these waves as well. Okay. It's a very kind of dry version of the Bahama Blue. Doesn't have to be Bahama Blue, it just happens to be, you know, somewhat of a medium tone blue. Alright. Why don't we create a little bit of a separation between kind of that cresting wave and the underside of it. Sometimes they call it the bowl, you know, in that area. Just kind of fleshing it out a little bit more with each color that you lay down on there. It's kind of creating a little bit more of depth within the shape itself, the form. It's kind of seeing the volumes of a shape, or it might not even be seeing them, but you know, as much as defining them, you're defining them through the use of value and ink and just different layers. The more layers of transparent ink that you lay down, unless you're just going with all the same, you know, really light values, it should get darker and darker. Okay, now I'm creating a little bit of separation between each. There's basically like 3 distances of these crests right here. So I'm creating down in the, I don't know, the valley areas of these waves. Some tones, so I'm coming in like this and adding it down that and just kind of streaking it up like that. Okay, so that's creating a little bit of depth here. Otherwise it tended to kind of all blend into the same, I don't know, texture. And I like depth in the scene in terms of the overall, but I also like depth within the objects within that space. I think it brings them alive a little bit more. It gives them, I always say this, it gives them kind of an opacity. And it just overall, it makes for a nice, rich surface, visually speaking. Okay, let's see. Let's create a little bit of separation between that wave and the moon. So remember what I said about checkerboarding. It's going from light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, just within that little space right there. So it's just kind of creating that separation between all the objects. Sometimes I don't really know where kind of a scene is going until I just kind of work on it for a while, and then like the waves are, for me, are starting to I don't know, come together at this point in time after all that ink that I've laid down there, because I don't know, sometimes you just never know what something is going to look like until you lay down layer after layer after layer on there. Okay, now that blue down there, it looks good in terms of creating value, but it looks kind of weird to me having it that blue in some areas, so what I am going to do is I'm going to go back with the black, and now where I've kind of established where I want, some of the darker areas to be with the use of tone, I'll go back and try to reiterate that again, once again with some more of this black here. And again, it's kind of more of a dry brushing effect or technique. In this case it's a sponge tip, but kind of same idea. I don't want this to be really super juicy on there. That pad that I'm dipping that into, it feels a little bit dry to me, so in this case that it's actually not bad. It's kind of it doesn't get too much ink on the tip, so I can just kind of blend the colors without worrying about, a real super dark, wet mark of that strong, dark colored hue in my scene. Okay. Underneath that wave right there, do a little bit more throughout there, and then we'll start getting into hopefully for what this scene is, kind of some of the fun effects, little splatter paint, and just giving some real movement and texture and explosion and excitement to the scene. really should have some background music going for these videos, but you're not supposed to do that unless it's like a copyright-free song. Alright, a little bit more tone up top here. Yeah, why don't we cap off the top a little bit more? Capping it off meaning just, you know, I don't want it all black, but bringing some more of that that darkness down into the scene, not down here, but, you know, up in that region. Alright. Scene might benefit from a little bit of warmth on that moon, but I don't know if I want to do that. In my mind, I'm thinking that it might look kind of strange, especially with all the white that I'm going to be using. Let's not do that. Let's as far as the temperature, you know, a change in there, but let's just leave it as is. Okay, Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White. It's an opaque watercolor. It's really dry. These things right here, not to worry, you can reconstitute it, just putting in some water. And I want to get it to the right consistency. I don't want it too watery, because when I apply it to the scene, I want there to be opacity to this white, and that's the entire idea of bleed-proof white. You know, you're supposed to be able to paint it onto something, and you won't be able to see what's underneath it. Okay, so I need to get this, the consistency of, what would it be? What would it be? Semi-thick, but not too thick. Maybe like thick syrup or something like that, maybe. Maybe thicker than that. But what I was getting at was, you know, you can just stir that right up, add a little, introduce some water to it, and stir it in, and you'll be ready to go. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's pretty thick. You know what it looks like? It's like pancake batter. That's kind of the consistency you want. You don't want it too thick because you want it to come off the brush too, and you don't want it to be so dimensional that when it splatters onto something, it's just it just has so much dimension it feels like sandpaper or something like that to the touch. You know, it will have some dimension though when it dries. It's just the nature of that that type of paint. Okay, let's see. I just don't do this technique very often, so I really have very little control over it. I better kind of spread out some papers here so I don't just get everything coated with paint, although I do that sometimes and it gets all over the place. It doesn't really bother me too much, but yeah. Let's take a little bit of precaution. You know what, before I do that too, if I want to, I think I might want to add in some birds here. Let's add in some small ones. I have to kind of do that now, because if I don't do it now, and if I add these birds in an area where it's really textured, I'm not going to get a good impression, so let's just add them in right now. This is a flock. Let me do a test stamp of it. Okay. These will provide kind of a mini focal point, I think. Alright, so just some little tiny birds there. Okay, splatter brush. Okay, this is just an old toothbrush. You can see I didn't even wash this off before. Let me get this. I wonder if I should get this a little bit wet. It's actually kind of crispy because I didn't remove that paint off of there last time. Alright, old toothbrush. You don't want to go with too soft of a bristle one, you know, because you want it to have a little bit of spring to it. Alright, now where am I going to do this? Let's say that the wave's kind of cresting right here, and you know, you're here white caps, it's, you know, like real choppy water, and there's wind out there, and kind of the spindrift, it's, you know, the water that's spray coming off the top of the wave is kind of, you know, spraying around there. Let's see, I can see a potential area could be, you know, in a lot of different areas right in here. I think I'm gonna, here's the motion, I'm gonna have to kind of bend this back and spray this, and I'm trying to think of which direction do I want to do it. That way? It really wouldn't be going that way, but I don't know if it would look better that way. It might. And I can just do an overall spray, like, you know, there's a bunch of spray just everywhere in the scene. But I don't know, let's try it. If you don't do this technique very often, and I don't, it feels a little bit, there's always kind of this slightly precarious, I don't know, feeling, notion. But, I don't know, like I always say in these videos, just start it off slow, and if you like it, add more. So, let's see. It's always hard to kind of gauge distance too. It probably depends on your brush and how much paint you've laid down. Well, let's just go for it. Oops. So I'm spraying this here, I'm pulling this right here. I thought it was going to go right here. It's ended up going right here, so I have to kind of get a feel for the, you know, this brush as well and where it's going to be splattering. It's kind of going back here, I don't know, for some reason. That's where the bristles are, I guess. Okay, I'm just kind of building it up slowly. It's giving me some variation, of course. You see it right, let me try to zoom in. See that texture down there? Cranking on my tripod right here. There's a lot of visual interest in terms of those white dots. Now there is the white gel pen, of course, but yeah, there's no way I'm going to get that sort of variation with the gel pen. So, let's see. The thing is, with the gel pen, I can remove dots, which you probably can with this as well, but this isn't something that I'm going to, you know, that I'm going to want to do that with, you know. I'm not going to spray all these dots on here and say, oh my gosh, I don't know if I like that. I might want to remove them, so be a little bit more careful about it too. I don't want to go overboard too. I'm going to try to oscillate, you know, texture with maybe a little bit less texture, you know, so I don't want to spray it over the whole thing. Maybe you can do that for a winter scene or something like that, but I don't think I want to do that here. So I'm being careful, but not super careful, okay? I just don't want to be, you know, I don't want to have regret. Stamp regret. Alright, how about coming off the, you know, the top of the wave here? So see that right down there? It feels, there's something that feels more natural about that though, right? You know, than adding just only gel pen dots. I can do some real specific gel pen dots in there as well, but that random kind of nature of that really, I don't know, it feels, it just has a better feel to it, I think, you know, with something like this scene. Okay, so a little splatter of paint back there is kind of fun. And it really can use some right around in here, can it? But maybe not just everywhere. Let's try to aim it a little bit at least. And I'm just doing real short strokes with my thumb on here, like that. Because like I said, I'd rather, you know, those little splatters go on there and build up over the course of, you know, 10, strokes or whatever of my thumb than one. It just, I have more control over it that way. Okay, now let's do it a little bit higher up, you know. I'm probably about a ½ inch down here when I was doing a lot of these. Okay, now I'm going to come up a little bit, and I'm probably about 5 inches. Let's just get some overall texture, maybe. I can't even see where it's going on, tell you the truth. Okay, here we go. It's just, yeah, it's splattering all over the place. But sparsely. Okay, looks about right, I'd say. Definitely a lot more movement, I would think, to the scene. See, the way I have this framed in the camera right now, I kind of like that smaller composition like that. Like if I just did that, I think that would make for a nice strong composition in just this area of the scene. Then I would probably darken, you know, these areas up here, you know, with a little bit more of the vignette effect. Let's see, that's what it looks like overall, though. I don't know. Maybe we'll give that a chance. Okay, now this opaque white, or bleed-proof white. Well, the bleed-proof is opaque, but the bleed-proof white will. There's kind of a chalky consistency to it, and I'm going to allow that to set up for a little bit, though, even though it might be dry, but let's go for some, this is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a controlled chaos, you know, in terms of adding that paint, that texture down on the scene. So let's, to kind of balance that out, I'll be going with some very specific controlled, highlighting in here with the white gel pen. Let me see if I can do that right now. Let's see. Like on a lot of these white caps here, I mean, I can't, control absolutely with that sponge tip applicator exactly where that goes. I can control a lot of it, but I can get back in, and with a very controlled tool, meaning a ballpoint pen, which is the gel pen right here, I can go back in and kind of reintroduce, some of the tops of some of these waves really nicely, where just ink kind of covered them up a little bit. So what I'm saying is, see, like that scalloped edge right there, I think that could stand out a little bit more with the use of some highlighting. In this case, that's why I didn't add in some tone in there, like a warm tone. If I added warm tone, then there'd probably be warm reflections down here. But I'm using a white pen, so let's do this. Let's add some highlights on this wave in the form of some lines and dots. I have crumbs all over here from that super dry tip right there. Hold on a second. Alright. Let's get this thing flowing too. One of the things is, as I'm doing this too, some of that paint is I'm rolling on some of those little dots, and it's kind of clogging my pen a little bit, so occasionally if I'm going like that, I'm trying to get that little paint out of the ballpoint tip of the gel pen. Okay, I'm looking for some more of these kind of obscured wave edges, you might say. So see that down there, I darkened in some of these areas down below. Oops, right there. But see at the top of it, I'm adding those highlights. So I darkened in the area back here with the stylus tool. But where that might have come into this edge a little bit, I can just reclaim that edge with the use of the gel pen. I love adding in these little details like this. These little details like this can really bring the scene to life a lot of times. You'll spend a lot of time adding tone in the scene and kind of fleshing things out. You're defining the lighting scheme and, setting the whole foundation for everything, but it's in these little highlights that really, for me, make all the difference. In terms of my own visual interest, I love detail and something kind of bolder, and very apparent will capture my, get my attention, but it's in all the little details like this that, for me, keep my attention and keeps me enjoying other pieces, not just of my own work, but just artwork in general or things like that. It's little nuances of a piece that I find to be really fun. Okay, so redefining some of these edges in here. Let's do the same for this wave up here. You see where I went into that tip there, and there's a lot of tone. I can go back in and reintroduce the edge. Maybe I can get rid of that black edge and put in some of this white gel. and that will kind of make it stand out against the background, be less kind of outliney up there. Okay, here's the crest of this wave right down here, and defining it a little bit more with the use of the white, the white caps. So that area down there is really coming to life, isn't it? Okay, let's hit this wave right here too. I'm going to use this white pen here and create some larger splashes coming off of the wave in a very precise way, I'm drawing that little dot, of course. And something that I wouldn't be able to do with that splatter paint, so we have kind of the controlled amongst the, for the most part, well, maybe not for the most part, but a small degree, the uncontrolled, meaning those little splatters. Okay, here's another wave back here I just discovered. I'm going to pull that out from the background a little bit, just by adding in some of that white gel to it. And so that pulls it out a little bit more, or maybe a lot more. Very textural, a lot of movement. So this is looking like. The thing that's going through my head right now is I'm wondering if I should try like a large branch or something kind of coming in from the top. It would represent thematically, or I don't know, maybe that's not the word, but it would look like someone is standing on the shore looking out to, this scene. Be almost like a hurricane or something like that. So I don't know if I want to do that or not. If I want to really make that type of compositional statement, someone standing on shore, at least in terms of this scene. Okay, I've added some little highlights onto these clouds. Okay, I'm doing it on the side of the cloud that's facing the light source, so the highlights of the clouds above the light source aren't going to be top illuminated, they're going to be bottom illuminated. Okay, bottom lit. The ones on the side will be side lit, depending on which side of the cloud is facing the light. So the clouds on the right side of the scene are going to be lit on the left side. top, bottom lit. I don't even know, like I said, if I'm going to keep these clouds up here in the composition, but one of the things that might determine whether they stay or go is how these little highlights look in the scene, so even though you don't know, you might as well kind of include them in there because it could, I don't know, influence your, your decision, or my decision in this case. Alright, so since clouds are bottom lit, as I go down here, these clouds are side lit, and there are some, so yeah, there's a few highlights in these clouds around here, but a lot of texture happening in here. Alright, let's see. This composition almost looks good from other angles as well, huh? Like that. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know if I would have, I guess you could, have some kind of wave crashing. It looks kind of weird though. But compositionally that looks okay too. Not in terms of the content, but just in terms of shapes, If these were abstract shapes, that would look kind of interesting. Okay, now one of the final things would be some additional pigment ink on here. Let's soften some areas around here, let them illuminate. That flock stamp might be slightly wet, as well as some of these clouds up here. I might let this dry for a little bit, and we'll come back to finishing this scene off, I think. You never know, there could be another step involved or something like that, or I should have added more color or something like that, but I think I'm probably the pigment ink step away from finishing the card. Every time I zoom into this and I look at the camera, I'm kind of leaning towards cutting off that top part. I don't know if I want to cut it off here or what, but that almost seems too much. I kind of like that right there, but we'll see. Alright, the bleed-proof white is very dry, the inks are set. The vibrancy of the ink it's about the same as when I applied it, at least visually, to me. Sitting here because the ink that I used was, for the most part it was the Marvy Black, and that has a tendency to not really fade out with the particular paper that I'm using, but sometimes with certain combinations of paper and ink you'll get kind of this drying, kind of a muted version of the inks that you've applied. But like in other videos that I've talked about or shown, you can, if that happens on yours, what you can do is you can just spray it with an acrylic spray of some sort, an art spray, or it could be even a polyurethane type of thing, and it should bring back the depth and saturation of those inks, very similar to a freshly applied ink. So, that being said, let's get into this now. There's a lot of value and crisp little embellishments in the form of the bleed-proof white splatter paint and white gel pen work. And what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll use some of the Colorbox Pigment Ink. Let me make sure that this one is, I don't know, reasonably moist. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like there's some moisture in this ink. Sometimes I'm using it and I can't tell if it's dry or not. Dabbing a lot of it off like this, okay, to kind of get this cotton swab tip smashed down a little bit, and also to remove off some ink because I don't want it, this ink to be applied onto the scene in kind of like a, a wet blob. All right, I want it to be somewhat of a dry brushing type of experience, where multiple taps is what it takes to kind of really even, make an impact on the surface here. I want to have control over it, so I want to have to do this. I want to be doing this in, multiple passes. Now, let's see. Boy, I wish I could zoom in a little bit closer. Let's get down here. You can see where this is kind of, I'm doing this in the lighter area to start off with, meaning, the tops of some of these cresting waves. And it's representing, it represents kind of the illumination of this mist in the moonlight, okay? So just putting down a little bit of that, this ink here can really do the trick. It's adding this kind of softer look around in these areas. Let's transition some of the wave in here into that kind of sky area around the moon where these birds are. I'm gonna knock some of those birds down a little bit in terms of their value, so it looks like they're kind of obscured in a little bit of the mist that's suspended in the air and being illuminated by the moonlight. These clouds over here, I mean, they look okay, but I think we could make them look a little bit better by giving them a soft kind of glow. If those clouds got really dark with the use of tone, then I wouldn't want to use too much of this. It kind of looks weird, like it's as if I was putting this over here. That looks kind of strange, right? Because it's dark over there, and we wouldn't have that kind of illumination happening as much. If we did use a little bit of it, maybe that would look okay, but for the most part, I'm keeping this in the light, I don't know, I guess you could have glowing mist or something like that, but got to be careful when you use, this type of effect in really dark areas. Not that you can't remove it if you don't like it, but if you use too much of it, it looks kind of strange sometimes. It really, really stands out, in terms of contrast. This gets a little bit dark underneath the wave there, so I'm gonna be careful not to transition that too far in here. I think it might look kind of strange. How about on some of these waves down here? We don't have to, I don't want to give the whole thing the exact same texture, so I'm not gonna do it everywhere, but maybe off a couple of them, and then we'll keep, a couple of them kind of crisp. So that one's a little bit different, than that one right there. So it creates a little bit of a contrast in terms of texture, and this one's adding a little bit more light, This wave out here, if I want to create a little bit of textural contrast from this part to this part, then we can try a little bit on here, like so. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so you can see that right on the tip there, like so. Let's do a little bit over here. Maybe over here, actually. At this point in time, too, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of ink on here to begin with, but it's getting drier and drier, and sometimes that's when I start using it in those darker areas, because there's so little on here. It's just very little applies, and that's kind of what I want. I just want a little bit of touch of that, kind of that look and effect. See this right here? It kind of creates this little glow right there. See, amidst this dark area, you have these little glowing bits right in there. Kind of makes it look like those little spots are glowing too. So hold it out at a little bit of a distance, and you can see kind of the effect it has down here. Alright, let's put some more on these clouds. Let's give them a little bit of a illuminated, soft edge. I'm kind of leaning towards retaining this top portion in terms of just not cutting it off. I was thinking about cropping this scene. But I don't know if I'm going to do that now. I don't know. I'll see what it looks like when I'm done with this this portion of the scene, this technique. Okay, just like I highlighted some of the bottom sides of these clouds, because the moon is underneath the clouds in this case, I will also highlight some of those areas with the pigment ink, so it's like you're giving these clouds a little bit of a crisp highlight, but you're also doing it with a soft highlight, a soft texture. Contrasting textures with that same area, reiterating the same thing, which is gaslight, and we're creating the reflected light. I would say the white gel pen is the thing that gives these scenes the most dramatic, touch, I guess. In very little spaces, you know, or a very little area, I guess, you know, they're covering, but because they stand out so much. But this is a way to kind of do things in a much more, I don't know, it adds a lot in a more kind of graceful, subtle way. I mean, it stands out for sure, but you know, just kind of that diffusion. As far as a textural balance to the whole scene, these little, even though this is white and it represents value, but it is equally, or if not more, about the texture of it. And that textural balance is you know, sometimes it's really needed in some ways, you know. That's a really busy area right there with all that splashing and crisp impressions and dots and shadows, but, you know, you add these little things like that in, and just overall it kind of lends itself to kind of a more, I don't know, harmonious balance between kind of everything else that's going on in that scene. Okay, I was looking at this right here. Let's add this is the cresting wave. It's a very sharp, you know, definitive thing, object within the scene. Let's go in. I think this could really use some of the softer touch. Okay, on the wave. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of obscuring the edge slightly, because that side of that wave is a little bit lighter because I added the shadow on the back side of it, you know, away from the moonlight. But let's go in and add some of this to the wave here, and you know, that kind of that wave, it'll look potentially more, I don't know, kind of magical, kind of having that glow about it. We're not illuminating it, but it just represents illumination, you know, with the via contrast. Alright. So I think that wave looks a little bit better. A little bit of an obscure kind of area where that wave meets the kind of the background sky, but yeah, I think it looks okay. Kind of almost looks like the see, you know, sometimes you just, I don't know, you don't really know exactly what a scene is going to be about in the, you know, from the beginning to the end. I mean, I certainly had an idea. I wanted a cresting wave kind of encircling this background of the of a moon, but I'm starting to kind of see what this ended up being. I see this wave is kind of curling around like that, and all of the clouds are kind of doing the same type of thing, you know, in terms of that motion. So maybe that's, you know, where this kind of wave is kind of cresting up here. It's almost like becoming part of the sky. So that being said, if I want to, I can kind of go with that a little bit more and incorporate that wave into the sky somewhat, you know, with the use of, you know, some of this pigment ink. So maybe these waves are, you know, whipping up a lot of mist and spindrift and whatnot, and it is kind of going up here, and it's somehow becoming part of the that sky, or maybe it's creating that sky. So that's what this one is about for me. As far as the movement of it, I wasn't thinking about something like that. So one of the things is, you know, my point here is just sometimes you just got to start off with kind of an idea and just let it go where it seems to be taking you. You just have to kind of be open to you know, letting a piece of work go in the direction that it just seems to be going in. I don't know, maybe naturally or visually or whatnot, as opposed to having kind of a really firm set notion on exactly what you want the scene to look like, you know, before you even start. I don't do that because I'm not worried about like that type of thing, and plus when I've probably tried to do that in the past, I don't know, it seems to just go in a direction of its own sometimes. And I really say that too sometimes because I might do a scene and I'll think, oh, let me try to do that again, or I've been at conventions where we've been doing demonstrations before, and you know, sometimes we do make and takes, and sometimes I do cards for people and they just make the request and I do it, and sometimes I finish with one and the next person up goes, I want that same exact card. And sometimes you can get it, you know, pretty close, 85%, 90%, but sometimes it just, with all the colors that you use, potentially, it's really hard to achieve again sometimes. So I just embrace that kind of notion of a difference from card to card. All right. Let's see what this would look like. Let's crop this off. Okay. So that's the card there. This is going to look really good when I matte this card. I'll probably do it on a little bit of a, you know, where it has a little bit of a border like that around there, and we'll go with some blue around that. But let's see if we cover that up. We can make it kind of a square composition. That might look interesting. Or do we like the whole thing? Let's see what this looks like here. I don't know. I'll figure it out. And I'll show it in the beginning of this video, so you will have already known what I've done if you've watched this. So, all right. Sometimes a title comes to mind immediately, but on this one I'm really not quite sure. So, anyways, kind of a fun scene. Monochromatics with a little bit of blue tinting on here. Kind of more about the movement and kind of what's happening in here as far as the textures in terms of you know, the splashing, crashing waves and the explosion of light, you can say, you know, through the use of texture and kind of the embellishment of that idea with the use of the pigment ink, the white pigment ink. So you can really see that up in there. See all those birds in the background there. If you just kind of tap them off a little bit with some of that pigment ink, it really sets them back into the scene because it's saying that there's a lot of moisture in the air. The moisture is being kind of illuminated, and that's why you see that kind of obscuring of their forms. So where this scene is, you know, what it's all about for me is all that texture down at the bottom there. I love texture and contrast, and in this one it's about kind of drama, I guess. And I don't know, this one became kind of about movement to me, like visual movement in terms of that swirling here. Maybe I'll keep that up there because it really reinforces that idea of the kind of the visual movement within the scene. So yeah. All right. So, still no title coming to mind. I'll figure it out. Anyways, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed the scene.